Hey, how are you doing, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name's Gavin, and as always here for Week 11, just like every other week so far this season, we're getting an early start on our waiver wire ads here for this upcoming week's fantasy games. These are players that, based off of this past week's actions, some injuries to key players at key positions, we're going to be going out, targeting them, and putting in those early claims to make sure that we can get them on our teams. And don't forget, obviously, the waiver period doesn't process until very early in the morning for most fantasy leagues out there until Wednesday morning. But let's go ahead, get things done with, and get a jump on that. So without further ado, let's hit the intro, and let's get straight in to our must-add players here for Week 11. As we get into today's episode, make sure if you're new around here to the SFS channel to click that subscribe button. We've got all the information you need on a week-to-week basis with tons of new episodes for each individual week's fantasy action. Trade advice, lineups, waiver wire, whatever it is, we've got you covered, and we try and be the most interactive fantasy channel on YouTube by responding to as many of your comments as we can. And also, we've got an awesome free community Discord to join to interact with other fantasy players who take part in watching SFS and taking on this fantasy season with us. So, with that being said, my priority ad for this week is A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers. This is a big deal. Aaron Jones is down with, we don't have an official diagnosis at the time of recording this video, late on Sunday night as we are posting this early on Monday morning. But A.J. Dillon stepped in and absolutely dominated after Aaron Jones suffered what is initially being called an MCL sprain, and for the traditional football timeline, that means anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. And with how conservative, I myself am a Green Bay Packer fan, with how conservative I have seen this organization in the front office be regarding player injuries, that's honestly something you like to see, because that means players are coming back at full strength. They're not re-injuring themselves. But the front office has been very, very cautious with other critical players and making sure they have extended time to regain full health and get back to full strength. That means, in my opinion, I think we might be leaning a little bit closer to 4 weeks for Aaron Jones. And I think an MCL sprain, based off of what that injury could have potentially been, is probably a good sign, and it's probably fairly lucky that that was the extent of the injury that Aaron Jones sustained in that contest against the Seattle Seahawks. But A.J. Dillon filling in here has 3 down workhorse running back written all over him. The Packers have already lost their third-string running back, Kylan Hill, to season-ending ACL surgery. So A.J. Dillon is the lone back remaining on this roster. They've got Patrick Taylor as their next man up here behind A.J. Dillon. But to me, this just screams A.J. Dillon's going to be in this offense, taking almost every snap there is to handle here. He can run the ball. He is very physically imposing. He can catch the ball in the backfield as well. And on the goal line, he is the hammer that'll punch that thing in and get 6 points up for this Packers offense. Over 120 yards from scrimmage against the Seahawks. 2 touchdowns on the goal line. This guy's a monster. He's going to come in here and probably post dang near top 12 fantasy running back numbers on a week-to-week basis in the absence of Aaron Jones, because, again, that usage, he's not going to be competing for touches with anyone else in this offense, and the talent he possesses, he is very, very useful and versatile. Again, he can go out there and batter opposing defensive linemen and linebackers. He bounces off of players. He's got a little burst to him, and catching the football out of the backfield can be a very, very useful asset to teams in PPR leagues. Cam Newton, the Carolina quarterback, returning back home. Very, very exciting to see him back out there for the Panthers, scoring 2 touchdowns. His first snap back on a football field here in 2021 in terms of regular season action was a house call for 6 on the goal line. The old quarterback power with him obviously doing that. We've seen so many times over the course of his career as a Panther finding the end zone with his legs. But Cam here, the interesting situation, he did not start this week, so he was activated for this game, which there was a little bit of question as to whether or not Cam would be the starter for this team here in Week 10. It was probably more unlikely than it was that he was actually going to overtake P.J. Walker right off the bat here. But I would not be shocked whatsoever if heading into Week 11 against the Washington football team and Ron Rivera, Cam's old head coach in Carolina, if this coaching staff and this front office gives him the green light to go out there and be the Panthers starting quarterback. They're paying him an awful lot of money to sit behind P.J. Walker and be this team's technically third string quarterback with Sam Darnold out, P.J. Walker being the two. I think Cam's going to come in here and command this offense the rest of the way. If he can get the playbook under control, he could start as early as Week 11. If not, I think that he is certainly their at least middle ground plan and option. I don't know if we'll see what happens, whether Sam Darnold will recontrol this job once he comes back from his injury. Whether or not he's able to, that'll be up in the air and yet to be seen, depending on how the Panthers continue to stack up with the rest of the NFC in terms of the playoff race this season. But I think there's a very real chance here that you get a very viable fantasy quarterback in Cam Newton, because at the end of the day, basically what this comes down to is if Cam Newton finds a way to start games for this Panthers offense at the quarterback position, he is going to put up very respectable fantasy numbers. Players at this position that run the football, score touchdowns with their legs, and Cam Newton brings something that not too many other players in recent memory have brought to the table. We saw Josh Allen be kind of this type of a player last year. He's his team's best goal line back. He'll run in there and add such a dynamic level of point production with his legs that not too many other quarterbacks do. We see Lamar Jackson get all these rushing yards accumulated, but he's still not a player who is used as a battering ram and scores all that many rushing touchdowns. So Cam Newton is a very unique fantasy situation. Only threw 4 passes this past week. 3 out of his 4 passes were completions, 8 yards and a touchdown to Robbie Anderson on the goal line. And then he had 3 carries, 14 yards and a touchdown. Again, this is predicated around rushing value. Cam Newton is not an incredibly accurate passer. He's not going to be an elite ball distributor and get this football super efficiently to the players in this Carolina offense. But what he can give you with his legs and in the ground game is what makes him such a valuable piece. And at bare minimum, he should be rostered as a fantasy quarterback too going forward. Chuba Hubbard, Cam's new teammate here. This is a must roster player the rest of this season. I don't care what your league size is, unless you're talking 6 or 4 teams. I think that there might even be a role out there where Chuba Hubbard can have some fantasy utility in 8-man leagues if you're the Christian McCaffrey owner. There's too much risk now. CMC re-aggravated his hamstring in Sunday's game against the Arizona Cardinals. And after he missed 5 games, 5 weeks of action, and then suits back up and you expect him to be healthy, the fact that he is re-injuring this hamstring and having setbacks with that hamstring problem is very, very worrisome. If you are a Christian McCaffrey owner and Chuba Hubbard is not rostered in your leagues, you need to put in a claim and do everything in your power to go out and acquire him off of the waiver wire or try and make some respectable trade-off for Chuba Hubbard. He's only rostered in 50% of leagues right now. He was dropped in 25% of leagues this past week on ESPN because of Christian McCaffrey's return and resurgence into action. Now, CMC was not totally held out of this game after he kind of tweaked that hammy again, but he only had 6 touches in the second half of that contest. So there's a real risk here. There is a very real level of uncertainty. Can Christian McCaffrey stay healthy the rest of the season? The hamstring is starting to become a problem here. Chuba Hubbard is a very, very necessary insurance policy option and someone that needs to be rostered in almost every league. Mark Ingram for the New Orleans Saints, another high-level handcuff option here. Stepped up, did an exceptional job, over 100 yards from scrimmage in Alvin Kamara's absence against the Tennessee Titans this past week. Ingram just belongs in the Saints jersey, and technically on the screen here, he does not wear number 22 for the Saints, but number 14 just does not look right, so we had to put Mark Ingram in his OG number for the Saints that he had with the beginning of his career in I believe it was 8 seasons he played with New Orleans to start it off. Mark Ingram, though, in a situation where the Saints don't really have another dynamic running back after him on the depth chart, it's the Alvin Kamara and the Mark Ingram show. Ingram's got some fancy utility. He's a very, very low-end flex play when Kamara's out there and available to play. But in the meantime, until we figure out if Alvin Kamara's going to be able to go this week and the issues that surround that knee injury that he sustained last week, I'm picking up Mark Ingram. I'm being safe, again, especially if I am that Alvin Kamara owner. Moving into the fantasy playoffs here, if there's one lesson we've learned this year about top-end fantasy draft picks at the running back position, it's that they're going down left and right, and you need to make sure you have a bailout option in the event that the worst plays out. This week, Kamara very quietly was ruled out of this contest against the Tennessee Titans. And when those type of things happen, you don't want to have to be the first one to jump on your phone, add Mark Ingram off the waiver wire, and if that wasn't you, you're screwed this week. So just stash him on your bench. Be safe. This is especially, again, important for owners of those running backs who need to pick up the handcuff for their top-end players. Rhamondre Stevenson, this is one that maybe some players won't need to go out and add. I would say if you're in a league that is under 12 members, maybe Rhamondre Stevenson is not a running back for you to go out and add here. I would definitely prioritize a Chuba Hubbard or a Mark Ingram over this because at the end of the day, I expect Damian Harris to be out of concussion protocol next week and to be able to suit up for the Pats. But Rhamondre Stevenson did a fantastic job this week filling in as a starter for this Patriots offense. 20 rushes, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 receptions for 14 yards on top of that, average 5 yards per carry. That's very impressive stuff. We really liked Rhamondre Stevenson here at SFS out of college, out of the University of Oklahoma. Very dynamic. He's a big-bodied back. He can run people over, play physically. He's a player that can get the job done when given the starting role in this offense. What I've liked to see is that there's been games this season where even though he's not the starter, Stevenson has been incorporated in this offense, given touches, valuable ones at that, and produced very nicely with them. He's another quality handcuff option going forward the rest of the season, that if he gets another opportunity to start, he is certainly someone worth a lineup start. Dan Arnold, for those of you who are very desperate and needy at the tight end position, here's one owned in just above 25% of leagues. Dan Arnold has some very sneaky fantasy value here, 8+ points in 3 straight weeks here in half PPR scoring. And again, this is a sneaky play. Not too many people out there own Dan Arnold. And for a tight end position that can be rather tricky to go out there and find respectable lineup options on a week-to-week basis, he has shown that his fantasy stock has increased since being traded to Jacksonville this year. In those 8+ fantasy point performances, all 3 of those games have 60 or more receiving yards and no receiving touchdowns. What does that mean? Dan Arnold is doing the dirty work. He's not like some of those other tight ends out there in fantasy that it's touchdown or bust. And that's the landscape right now for a lot of players at this position. The fact that Trevor Lawrence, you've probably heard this been said once or twice before, a good tight end can be a young quarterback's best friend, and Dan Arnold has been very, very impressive in the receiving game in some tougher matchups the last few weeks, so notably the Buffalo Bills. So Dan Arnold, again, I love the consistency, the fact that you're giving me 3 straight weeks of 60 or more receiving yards. If he can keep this pace up here and remain one of the top passing game options for Trevor Lawrence here in Jacksonville, this could be a useful lower-end tight end start for the rest of the season. And I just want to toss these 2 names out here. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but we've talked about these 2 rookies the last 2 weeks, and I still feel they are not being owned in the amount of leagues they should be. Elijah Moore, he's still not a weekly must-start in your lineups, but he's coming, man. Only owned in 36% of leagues. The upside is there. You talk about the talent, the skill he's got. Now, it was a little concerning to see him not have a catch until late in this game when Joe Flacco stepped in, but then they marched down the field. It was literally Joe Flacco to Elijah Moore, 3 straight passing plays, touchdown, gets in the end zone. Boom. Stock up for Elijah Moore this week. He's getting the job done. Talented player. The production the last 3-4 weeks has been spectacular, at least in terms of how that projects for him the rest of the season. He's got an awesome fantasy playoff schedule. That's something we'll talk about in another video this week. But Elijah Moore, someone you absolutely need to stash away in 10, 12-man leagues as a high upside play the rest of this season. And then Rashod Bateman. I might prioritize Rashod Bateman over Elijah Moore because I think he's got a better quarterback, obviously with Lamar Jackson. And this talent that he possesses, the route running, the skills, the intangibles, he's got it all. I love Rashod Bateman. He already, to me, is just not getting enough opportunities right now. He really came on strong late in that Dolphins beating of the Baltimore Ravens this past week on Thursday night. But man, Rashod Bateman needs more reps. He needs more opportunities, more targets thrown his way. He's a very talented player, can separate from some of the best defensive backs in this league go out, add Rashod Bateman this week if you've got the chance. Again, owned in under 40% of fantasy leagues. Alrighty, those were some names to keep your eye out for on the waiver wire here in week 11. These are some high upside plays, some people that can give you some really nice utility in lineups for even the short term, with we talk about an A.J. Dillon still being my priority add because of the numbers he can give you at such a volatile and important position in your lineup. So thank you guys so much for watching. Remember, if you're new around here, click that subscribe button and go check out some of our other fantasy episodes from this week. It's Monday morning. We get things kicked off with a bang here on SFS. 3 episodes are already out today, so go check out those other 2, and we'll see you guys there. Peace out.